guys, it's your old pal Tony Giles TG here, welcoming you back to the record room. And before I get into this week's picks, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you out there that have pledged a patron, that have retweeted us, sent me a message on social media, all the labels that have reached out, people that have also sent me messages asking about merchandise for the cool record room logo by Black & Design. You know, merchandise will be coming. We'll definitely do something probably later on in the summer. But I'm extremely grateful to all of you guys out there for supporting yet another crazy vinyl endeavor of mine. It makes me happy when I do this stuff, and you guys out there seem to enjoy it as much as I do. So thank you so much. There will be plenty more of the record room to come. But I'm going to kick off this week's episode with something that I think is pretty fantastic. And this is the brand new We Want Sounds reissue of the mystery Kandaichi Band and their album The Adventures of Kandaichi Kosuke. And this guy right here, he is Mr. Kosuke. And from what I'm led to believe, he is somewhat like a Japanese Poirot. He is a fictional character. I believe there's something like 70 novels with this character in them. And the album I hold in my hand, this isn't a soundtrack, this is an imagined soundtrack from 1977, which is a blend of city pop, jazz fusion, and kind of late 70s Japanese disco, essentially. And it's so good. It's unbelievably good. If any of you guys out there are enjoying the recent wave of city pop reissues from Ship to Shore Phono Co., you are going to love this record. Especially if you're a soundtrack fan as well, you're absolutely going to love this. It's unbelievably good, so catchy, and it's one of those records that I found out about this reissue about a month ago, and the album is now 42 years old. And I'm just thinking to myself, how have I just found out about this? If I'd have known this existed, I would have gone and I would have hunted and I would have searched for an original version of this. Originally came out on King Records, which is a huge label over in Japan. I did look for this on kind of like Spotify, iTunes, DSPs. Couldn't find it, but I did find it on YouTube and was able to listen to the whole thing on there. And there are some records that just come along out of nowhere, and you are like, "What the heck was this? What?" And this is it. I mean, for a start, just look at that cover. Just look at, if you saw that in a record store, would you not be intrigued by that? If I saw that anywhere, I would instantly be like, well, what is that? That's a vampire? Is that a vampire? Is he a vampire? He's playing a flute. I'm interested. I want to know more. And this is a fantastic reissue from We Want Sounds. It's really, really nicely done. You get this stellar artwork, which I think is just amazing. The album itself, no frills, which I am all for. Comes on beautiful black vinyl. I say this is probably about 140 gram. It's not super thick, but it sounds great. It really does. Nice big King Records logo as well. You don't see that very much these days, and I'm a big fan of that. And inside the package, you also get this great, I say great, great is kind of a little bit debatable, but you get this 4-page, it's essentially an insert with some liner notes about the character and the album by Anton Spice. The rest of it, though, is all in Japanese, which I believe mimics the original insert inside the original album. Now, my Japanese is as rusty as all my other languages, so a lot of this is lost on me, but it is nice to have. I will definitely say that. And the great thing is, the album's just come out. You can get this anywhere. You can even get this from that online place that people don't like to admit they shop from, because, they're kind of the evil overlords of everything. But it's available on there, and I think it's around £22. It's not an expensive album, and something I would recommend to literally everybody I know. Now, where do you go after Japanese late 70s disco? Well, I mean, the obvious answer to that is, of course, ZZ Top's seminal album, Eliminator. And this is kind of, you know, this probably happens to more people than you know about. I mean, it happens to me all the time, so I've got to assume there are other people it happens to as well. This came into my possession through record collecting happenstance, divine intervention, if you will. I work from home, so I generally have music or the TV on in the background, and I was flicking through Netflix the other week, and I came across a documentary I hadn't seen, and I love me a documentary, and especially a music documentary. I'm a big fan of music docs, and will watch music docs on virtually everybody, even if I'm not a fan. It's always nice to learn something about a band's history, and I've actually gone back and discovered tons of classic albums that way. I actually watched a classic albums doc on the Steely Dan album Asia, which I just never given a thought about, and now I own more than one copy, weirdly enough. I love that album. It's a fantastic album. I was on Netflix and I came across a documentary called ZZ Top, that little old band from Texas. And essentially, it's the history of ZZ Top up until the Eliminator album, because this thing, I mean, after this thing, ZZ Top just, it's something like 13 million sales, could be, it's huge, it's massive. And obviously, you know, my ZZ Top knowledge, I'll be honest, is cursory at best, and, you know, I know the hits, and luckily, 3 of their biggest are on this album. Gimme All Your Lovin', Sharp Dressed Man, and Legs, which probably are my 3 favourite ZZ Top songs, and I saw this in my local second-hand record store and thought, well, I must own this. It was literally the day after I'd watched the documentary, and I haven't given any thought to I must purchase some ZZ Top, but there it was. And it was around the price of a cup of coffee, I will say that. And it's in really good condition as well. It came out in '93. This is the European release. Very simple, very straightforward. You get this nice, I mean, this, everybody knows the car from the videos, right? Even as a kid, I remember, you know, seeing the car, seeing the videos. The album itself comes on glorious black wax, which is nice. For some reason, though, and I do find this weird, the sides are labelled X1 and X2. I mean, I don't think I own any other albums like that. I might do, but I'm not sure. And that's pretty cool. It comes in a, you know, it's like a poly bag, a printed poly, which is really cool, which comes with the car on it. And the other cool thing, their albums used to do this, they don't do this anymore. And I find this stuff kind of interesting. I'm probably, like, you know, alone or in a very small group of people that find this stuff interesting. But there is actually an insert in the album. It has a ZZ Top logo on one side, but also has their other releases, which I think is really cool. You know, they didn't all come out on Warner Brothers as well, so I'm guessing Warner Brothers reissued the earlier ones. But just finding the album, you know, with all of its bits and pieces for only a few pounds was great. And then I immediately came home, gave the album a clean, and then cranked Gimme All Your Lovin' and Sharp Dressed Man unfeasibly loud. And the record sounded as good now as it's ever done. So if you happen to see Eliminator out and about for only a few pounds, trust me, it's the only ZZ Top album you're ever going to need, in my opinion, and it's definitely worth picking up. Now I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. I am a huge fan of female-fronted bands and female vocalists. I love women recording artists. I just do, from, you know, the late 40s all the way up to right now. If I had to do like a top 5 desert island disc thing, which would be awful, I wouldn't want to do it. All 5 would probably be albums with female singers. And one of the albums I would definitely take with me would be this little bad boy right here. And this is the album Blush by the band Night School. And this is out on the Graveface Records label. Graveface, obviously run by Ryan Graveface, who's the man behind Terrorvision as well. And this album came out a few years ago now. There has been another one since this, but man alive, this album is just sonic perfection. It's so unbelievably good. This is female rock band-ish, Imagine the Ronettes or the Shangri-Las or the Chantels or any of the classic kind of 60s female-fronted groups, and bring that right up to date. Bring that now, plug everything in, and just have them create some of the most memorable, catchy pop songs that you've probably ever heard, and you will be close to what Night School deliver. The opening track on this album, These Times, if you could wear out a digital recording, I'd be there, because I have had that song on repeat so many times. I didn't actually own the vinyl version of this until last year at Monochrome. I actually picked up the vinyl version because I had the digital, and I've been listening to it so much since the day it came out. I bought it the day it came out, and in fact I did a podcast with the band Night School over on the DFN, so if you would like to check that out, I will leave a link below for you. But this is just a wonderful album. Check out any of Night School's releases because you will not be disappointed. This is a tremendously thick slice of vinyl and comes on this beautiful greenish marble there on Graveface Records, and this is available now. You can get this, so head on over to Graveface Records Bandcamp, I believe is where their store lives, and grab a copy of that. Obviously, if you happen to be in the Savannah, Georgia area, go and visit Graveface, and while you're there, go and visit their brand new museum as well. I can't wait to get over there myself. But Blush is one of those records that I will never ever be able to forget. This album, ever. It's so good. I've said I own the digital, I own the album, I own the damn cassette too. I love this album. No matter where I am in the world, no matter what I'm doing, I can always listen to this album and it will always come with me. It really will. It's such a fantastic, fantastic album. If you listen to one thing this week, listen to two. Listen to the Mystery Candace Band and also listen to Night School as well, because if I haven't tipped you off enough, seriously, one of my favourite records and definitely something I would play for anybody. And while I'm kind of on the female-fronted band, musician, artist train, listening to Night School, it was one of those things where I've been listening to this album since it came out, so I don't listen to it as much these days, but whenever it comes on shuffle, I'm kind of, oh man, and I just end up listening to the whole thing. But listening to that reminded me of the great single Pull Shapes by the Pipettes. And essentially the Pipettes were, I believe, a similar kind of a thing. I'm not sure if they actually played instruments or not in the video for this song, which is a superb video. Definitely check it out on YouTube. They're singing with a band backing them, whereas I know Night School play all their instruments. But Pull Shapes, this is, I mean, the 7-inch looks like an old 45 that you would have bought, you know, kind of in the 60s. And on the back it's cool because there are dance moves to this song, and you can learn how to pull shapes on the back. And this is a white vinyl 45, and I believe there was also a black vinyl version of this as well, or maybe it was red. There is another color of this. As pop songs go, this is the album this is on is a great album. I believe the album is called We Are the Pipettes. It's a great album, it really is, but Pull Shapes is definitely the standout from it. And if you have, you know, 3 minutes spare, just check out that one song. It is so fantastic. And if you're not humming it or singing it, well, you and I, my friend, are on different wavelengths. Now, 2020 is trucking along and we're already at the end of March. But as you guys know, as I've mentioned before, I had 1 or 2 teething problems with the record room, and when I originally visited the show and actually recorded the first episode, it was actually January in 2020, and on that episode I talked about all of my favourite releases from 2019, but unfortunately through one technical hiccup or another, that episode no longer exists. So I thought, you know what, I actually still want to talk about some of my favourite releases from 2019, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here, because this album, Monochrome Daydream by Bryce Miller, is quite simply probably the best electronic album I have heard in many, many years. This is out on the Spun Out of Control label based in London. I believe this album is now sold out on vinyl, but do check with the label. It's always worth reaching out to the label, be it, you know, through social media, email, contact form, whatever it is. There's no harm in asking. You know, I've done that before, where I've come to a band or I've come to an artist a bit late, and, you know, just on the off chance, oh, I don't suppose you've, you know, have you got a copy lying around or something like that? And sometimes there might be, oh yeah, you know, we've got copies, but, you know, there's a ding in the corner. If that's not an issue to you, we'll knock some money off. And hey, I want to have the music more than I want to have the cover. But this is quite simply just I am lost for words when I talk about this album, so I'm actually going to read what's on the Obi strip because it sums up this album to perfection. This album is called Monochrome Daydream by Bryce Miller. It is. Blade Runner era Vangelis ambience meets electronic dance floor destroyers. And that's what it is. It literally is that simple. It is just electronic perfection, sonic perfection that I mean, I'm a fan of Bryce. I've been a fan of his for a long time, and we all know that the Spun Out of Control label release really great stuff, primarily on cassette, but they are also dabbling in vinyl as well, and I love this record. It came out in 2 different variants. There was a pink variant, and there was also this gorgeous baby blue. Bam! Look at that. It looks good and it sounds great, which is something you'll always hear me say about records on The Record Room, and I love this. This is available now on Bandcamp. So if this physical version is sold out, fret not, because you can still enjoy this record. And it's something I would highly recommend doing. If you are a fan of electronic music, you're predisposed to already be in love with this. I will say this now, current electronic music or modern electronic music doesn't stoke my fire like older stuff does. And it could be because I'm older now, or it could just be that there is so much brand new electronic music now that I kind of get overwhelmed occasionally, but Monochrome Daydream speaks to me on so many levels. So this is definitely one I would recommend. And if you're able to grab a copy, regardless of color, grab it ASAP. Now, on the last episode of The Record Room, I showed off a Suspiria test pressing from 1977, which was actually an EMI test pressing of their version of the album. And one of our patrons reached out to me and said, how does it sound compared to the AMS version? Or, you know, the other versions of it. And weirdly enough, Suspiria is an album that I own several copies of. Maybe that's actually not that weird, but it is an album I actually own several copies of. I own 4 on vinyl, I own a couple of CDs, and I also own a couple of tapes of it as well. So I actually decided, and I've never done this before, but I figured I would actually give them all a listen to the first track, the opening track, Suspiria, the track I'm probably most familiar with, and I thought I'd see which one actually sounded the best. And now, the versions I have here, so I have the 1977 EMI test press. I have the 2014 AMS 180 gram black vinyl reissue. I have the Goblin 40th anniversary, I should say Suspiria 40th anniversary edition that came in the box set, which I don't know if you can see it, but it actually lives there. And then I have the recently released, or I say recent, it was a couple of years ago now, Deathwaltz version, which I have to say, this artwork, it's absolutely amazing. And now I'm not going to go into which one sounds the worst, because I don't do that. I don't see the point in doing that. I don't see putting anything down, because there's nothing to gain there. If I'm not a fan of something and you are, so what? That's all good. You know, I come to this conclusion a little while ago. There is no bad music. There are just things I like and things I don't. And listening to these 4 versions back to back, one version did actually sound a lot better than all of the others. And maybe surprising to some, maybe not surprising to others, the version that actually sounded the best is the oldest version. And that's the 1977 EMI test pressing of Suspiria. Now, it could be it sounded good for a number of reasons. It could be because it's an original version, it's not a reissue. It could be, I don't know. But all I can say is this is the version that sounded the best to me. Do any of them sound terrible? Absolutely not. They all sound fantastic. There's dynamic range on all of the versions that I own. I don't own every version though, so I can't really go too much into it. I mean, maybe if the opportunity comes my way to listen to an original 70s AMS pressing or one of the other reissues that have happened over the last couple of years, maybe I'll do that. But look, anytime you're listening to Suspiria, you're probably having a great time because it's an amazing record. But for my money, my favourite version, or the version I will be listening to most often, is definitely the 1977 Suspiria test press. And there you have it, folks. We've come to the end of another episode of The Record Room. So thank you for sticking with me, and thank you for your Patreon pledges. Thank you to the guys over at Cadabra Records for supplying me with this rather nifty shirt. I believe this is available over on the Cadabra Records website. Thank you again to Ogre for allowing me to use his music in this episode, Steve over at Black & Design for his killer logo, and of course Skojo for just being an absolute mensch. But until next time, remember, stay gold and spin those blackest circles.